ready to go?
Yeah,
Set to
is
go.
this on?
Yeah, well, don't. Well, I can tell you my favourite, my Grand Heights story. In there one day, this is great, and there was a Chinese. Well, there was a delegation from another country,
Yeah.
and we were also doing a site inspection at the hotel. We won't say what hotel it was, and then this bloke gets up on stage, and there's a lectern there, and he just bangs both and there's a noise, and then one of the speakers is on fire, is smoking, right? So he doesn't know that, so he goes and just walks off. Like you're going, if he was a sound guy, he wouldn't have done it.
No.
But there was this delegation.
But if
And so he had to-
he's a munitions expert, then he would have done it.
Exactly. But it was the most, and so suddenly there's smoke coming off a speaker.
Wow. I mean, we all hate that happening,
What is that?
but that is some severe consequences.
Yeah.
Don't ever. Is it on?
I blame films. They've sort of taught people that that's what you do,
Yeah.
and there's going to be feedback.
I mean, you
like they're
can talk.
expecting it.
You can just talk and see if it's on.
No.
It-
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
a possibility.
Don't have to do this.
But that feedback thing is another. It's in all movies. There's that particular, and I forget, someone's tracked it down. There's a particular car braking sound effects that some guy created in the 60s, let's say, and it's just been used.
Yes.
And you hear it all the time.
Exactly. It's
Yeah,
always
yeah.
the same.
The same gag happens with every time someone comes up to a lectern. There's foldback.
Feedback. But I think,
Sorry, feedback. Sorry.
Yeah.
I
It's
believe-
that same little
foldback,
tap, tap,
feedback.
tap, little squeal.
but often because the
What is that?
tone doesn't change, but that's telling us as the audience that you're now listening to that voice through a PA.
I know.
Yeah,
Versus
yeah.
what we're always listening to, which is a PA in the theatre.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
then all of a sudden we're hearing PA noise, and that dunk, dunk, dunk feedback tells us that. It is a not a trope, but it is.
Yeah, and as you say, they see it in the movies, so the guy gets up there, and they're not used to being up there sometimes, and they'll be like, okay, that's what I got to do.
That's what we
But you do see that a lot. You actually do see people. Is this on?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All that stuff.
And it puts the panic, and then you watch the PCO and everyone else looking at the AV guy because it's like, I'm doing my job. It's all right. But it is working.
And the worst part, like if you are doing audio and there's like handhelds on stage and you're sort of writing the faders and someone starts to talk and you don't quite have them up yet and they just assume, oh, well, it's not working. How do I,
ditch it.
what do I need to, just talk into it, I've got it up now.
Yes.
Just go.
Yeah, that's right. Or the magic change of mics.
Oh,
yes.
yeah. And it's like
what
the cards
nuts?
or
Yeah,
which
yeah.
cup is it under?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Where's the ball? Where's the ball?
As an AGM, and they're traditionally older retirees, and there's a guy talking, doing a question answer from a fixed mic on a boom arm in the aisle, and no one can hear him, and they're all yelling at me, and he's talking into a butterfly clip because someone else has walked off with it.
Yeah.
And they're looking at me, and I'm going, "There's nothing I can do. There's no mic there."
There's a classic bit of video. It must be from the 70s. I reckon it's in America. And they've got there's a handheld video camera and people giving a dedication to someone's birthday or something. Comes to grandma and she takes the microphone that everybody else has been using and she holds it up to her ear because she would have had a phone in her house like this. So she's talking.
Makes total sense.
Yep.
And of course, you don't know what she's saying because, and they give it to the next person. The next person talks about how wonderful Jimmy is or how wonderful Doris is or whatever.
Yeah.
Great. Like it's legit video. Like, love it.
All right, should we?
If only there was YouTube back then.
That's right.
We'd all see it.
We need.
Well, it now is on YouTube.
I think we've started.
Well, we have to at least introduce.
I think we do. I think we do.
I want to know who I'm speaking to.
So formally, officially, welcome to Gafferpedia.
I'm excited about being at Gafferpedia.
Fantastic, and welcome. So this is Andrew Gill. Andrew, for those who don't know, is a MC, is a host and a producer.
It's true.
And we want to talk today, the topic today is about the AV control desk, or what we would just call control. Sometimes also ops. We can talk about why different people have different terms for it, but it's basic. We'll call it control. You posted a post a few weeks back about the sanctity of control.
Exactly.
And
Respect.
yes, and it was a lovely read, and you can catch that on your social media, on
It's
your
on my LinkedIn.
on your LinkedIn page.
Mm.
We can post that to our socials
I
as
give
well.
permission, and I give verbal and visual permission as well.
Fantastic. So we'll do a link for that. Tell us a little bit about what happened, and I guess the gist of that.
Yeah, this is all true. So we're at a very esteemed establishment, and we're doing a roadshow, and it was a classic case where there was one crew running, not a hard show. So it was kind of a couple of people speaking to a beautiful series of videos primarily, and I was the MC. And this guy he was like a lovely kind of roadie rock kind of AV guy, and he was really caring. And he had come across a whole lot of things that weren't set up properly. So he's trying to solve these problems. Whether he's doing a good job or bad job, I don't know. That's irrelevant. Anyway, so there's a bit of stress, and we're now going, geez, we've got to get this going. We've got people coming in, and it's still not working for him. I just hit the microphone, how unprofessional. We're getting really close to time, and I then say, look, we're going to have to go, and we're going to have to solve these problems because we can't hold the doors any longer. And I had instinct that we'd be okay. So as we get the doors open and people come in, I go off and do something, and I come back, and there's a very wonderful woman, probably about my age, who sort of wants to, and she's actually behind the control. And I sort of say, look, I need you not to be here because we're in a venue that actually has very high, what's the word when you have to, inductions policy. So, like you can't. She said, but I need to plug my phone in. I need to.
You need to.
And I'm aware that my sound guy, he's fully stressed because it wasn't set up for him properly before. He's trying to make it as good as he can. Now he's distracted. And I say, look, if you could come away from here. I actually think I said, to be fair, I think I said no, and I'm not usually like that, but I was I said, but I need you to come. But I need to charge. How hard could this be? I just need to charge my phone. And she's still behind, and she's looking.
Oh, no.
She's looking to see where she can plug in. And I'm thinking, this poor guy for 50 minutes has been trying to make this work. And I say, I need to ask you, please come out from behind there.
Yeah.
And you can't plug in here. And she said, it mustn't be that hard. Anyway, so the guy, being helpful, says, we can. And so she says to me, well, that wasn't so hard, was it? And I said, but you need to please. She still didn't come out from behind the little controller. It was shoved in a corner.
Yeah.
And it was and I wasn't stressed about the gig, but I was trying to make sure that this person had focus on just making sure the gear, sound wasn't working. We had a camera at the back of the room that wasn't getting sound, and he couldn't understand why because of the way anyway.
Yeah.
So it was a weird scenario. And so it was kind of like, and I've seen it happen, the police person says, you need to move from here. And they go, no, just not for any reason, not for COVID, just no.
Yeah.
They go, I need you to move because, for no reason, I need you to move.
Yeah.
And that's what I sort of, and I've seen it again, we've probably all seen it where at an event, and I've seen it happen too, where someone's leaned over the control of a large, 8 or 9 people control, again, lots of things, and they just go, look, I just need, can I just have and they're looking down on the multiple,
the spaghetti of
looking to see where they could plug in, just like it's like like this possession of I need to now do this.
Yeah, and they look behind the ops control, and you say, "Oh, look, no, sorry, we can't help you." And they look, you've got 1,000 power boards there, and so it seems really unreasonable because they don't have any sort of background. But it does only take, aside from the distraction that you're talking about, if you do plug it in and then you want to get it out later.
Something else comes out with it.
Yeah, exactly. So they need it back, and you want to pull it out, and all of a sudden you've knocked the audio console out, and we've lost sound.
I've seen that. I've seen that happen.
Yeah, it has happened.
And you go, what just happened? And they go, this person
Yep.
did this,
Yeah.
or this person decided to pull out that power cord
Yeah.
over just off from where control is. So
Because you've said no, and so they go for a bit of an excursion around the perimeter of the building and find the piggyback that we all use,
Which is powering control. And
or the
their power
projector,
board,
or anything. Yeah.
So that's what happened, and I immediately told my clients who love me, and I said, just so you know what happened, in case there's any negative comments, this is
Yep.
the scenario.
Yeah.
And they said, oh, of course, and that was fine, and there was no comment back, because I think by then this person realised that they probably shouldn't have done it, but it was a weird thing. From a standing start, can I tell you, this is another bizarre. This is not really control, but this involves an amazing guy called Tiny Good, who's probably the best show rigger in Australia and probably in the world, one of the top 5 in the world. And this is many years ago at Southgate, and we were hanging stuff above a common area in Southgate, and because of every rigging issues outside of everybody's control, we were still going at 7 or 8 in the morning after starting at maybe 10 the night before. So we. In these days, there were no kind of protocols, but we just roped off the whole area, and I was sort of just saying, "Oh, just come round." And we had people going, "No, I come through here every day,
I'm not changing my
lifting up the rope at the top of the south gate, and walking through." And I'm going, "I've got riggers up there, and we've got and something had dropped during the night because." It was clear and safe to do so, not on purpose. So this is a funny concept that I think in our space it's rare, but in the real world, if you talk about healthcare or police, it must be happening all the time. And they're saying, "I'm doing this because I need you to."
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just this sense of entitlement, or just blinkers, not sort of opening themselves up to be aware that there's something else going on that I'm not aware of.
Yeah, it's often when you explain to people, and they actually stand back in the cold light of day, and they would see the logic.
Yes.
But when you're in it, their phone is really important.
Well, it's because they need to hear from a certain family member because something's just happened that no one else is aware of. And for them in that moment, it's like, this is actually really important. People don't understand, but it doesn't necessarily mean we need to, jeopardise a show or anything like that. There's implications.
And lack of understanding what those power boards do. It's just power, isn't it? So.
To everyone else, if the light turns off, they just put it back on. It's not that they don't realise that the implications are the high stakes are a little bit higher for us. Yeah.
So control is, you refer to it as a place of wonder, or a wonder hub, I think was...
The wonder hub.
Yeah.
The wonder hub.
I like that.
Yeah. And where magic happens and that sort of thing. So as an outsider, I'm essentially not an AV technician looking in, we forget, I should say, because we obviously grew up sitting at control, and we don't necessarily look at it as a wonder hub anymore, but it's just interesting that I think that other people see it as that.
Well, if you're not a technical person, there's a whole lot of things going on there. And we know that there's sound and there's lighting and there's someone or more than one person maybe doing a vision mix and changing what we see on screens or multiple screens. There might be a show caller there, and then depending on how complex the show is, there's more people and they all have responsibilities. And I reckon the first time I realised how important all that was actually doing this job for Australian Business Theatre, and it was in a very strange small venue in regional Victoria, and I was the MC for this big conference, and it was in those days you'd spend a lot of time rehearsing and material had been written, and it was a big thing. And then I happened to put some of my magic props sort of just behind where the stage was, and there were about 5 people all on Macs. And so they had this big rear project screen, and there were 5 people firing different parts of what we would now have as just one PowerPoint. Maybe 3, maybe I'm going too far, but there were a lot.
There were.
And I'm going, wow, they've all got a Mac S. Wow, that's 5 Mac SEs there. I'm 21 and I've had a Mac SE for maybe a year or two. So it was a big thing. Maybe I was 24.
And most people don't see that. That's the whole thing. It's all behind stage. It's all hidden, but there's a lot going on.
And so I think that and we know, and even as a producer, you are always tied into time and budget, let's say. And so you want 3 days. The client can't afford to have the venue for 3 days, so you might have a day before or you might have 2 hours before. And so the concept is the show will always go on, but all those people doing those bits, and I'm sure also you forget how much time it might take for some of these bits to happen. And especially, say, lighting. I always talk about lighting. If I'm talking to people who don't know about lighting, I say, for this rehearsal, the lighting's going to be playing catch-up the whole time because they haven't seen this before.
Yeah.
So it might get there before we finish rehearsal, but it might not because they're still trying to program the bits in. And so, you know, a lot of these people are doing this. I think the magic part comes in because these people are doing the work pretty much in real time quite quickly. Now, you know, there's been ideas, there's been some presentation material that's been created, even down to the maybe suddenly someone says, oh, the CEO has a script now. And now at the last minute we're putting that script into the PowerPoint presentation or the keynote presentation or whatever presentation format you're using. And so there is this kind of weird alliance of people who are usually in black and they're generally fired up, ready to go.
Yeah. And that can be the hard thing sometimes because it does sort of seem like magic from the outside and this sort of thing. And with all the possibilities that you can do now with all the technology and all this sort of stuff, sometimes it does seem like, well, things can just happen. And sometimes just trying to, whether it's to clients or other people, when you do only have the one day when you thought you had 3 and you have to sort of try to explain, we can't actually do everything that we originally planned, or like there's implications to all these different things that we want to do. We need to be able to have the time to make sure that it not only is it possible to put together, but we know that it's going to be reliable and we can test it. And, you know, let's work together to not only get what we want out of it, but make sure the show's going to go on, it's going to go well, and sort of rein in some expectations as well, because it's not always just magic. Things need to happen. The people need to be there and have the things in place.
Yeah, and you know the other, and I say this to clients with due respect to everybody who works in a venue, especially. And you know, I sort of always tend to bring some people, and I talk to my client about that we own. So if I have a technical director there, if I have cameras that we know, if I have even a stills photographer or a stage manager or a show caller, these people speak the language that I speak all the time, which is for good or bad, but they understand. So that's going to be a shorthand version of getting some of this up a bit faster. But even if you think about just the safety aspect, you know, when you are rushing, the 2 big dangers in a show are getting the thing up and getting the thing out when people are tired. And so even that part of just reputation, making sure this works, making sure we've set up well, and that, you know, we're all responsible for trying to push or getting that extra thing in. But look, I think generally because of technology, John, you're right, people think it's faster. But they're actually laying more in. And, you know, I think you often can then think about how could we have done that better for everybody. And the way it is you're not making the show up on the day. So you're coming in with all the content. And I don't do this all the time, depending on the show, but you've got the content pre-made. You can so suddenly your poor technical team aren't stressed out about making stuff on the day. And this happens.
But we've all done plenty of shows where they might have had an idea, but now they're changing it because they're there and they see it.
That's right. And so all that pre-make stuff,
it's so important.
Suddenly then means you can now look at the finessing, and you can now look at actually all the elements that sometimes you can't get to.
And I think that's important to communicate. Like sometimes if we talk to a client and say, look, we'd really like to get the content the day before, or we'd like this to happen, and they might see it like, you know, they're under a lot of stress to get it to us. But really, it's not just because we want it. It's actually for your benefit, because if we get that and can do everything ahead of time, then when we're there on the day, we've got time to hold your hand a bit more, or we've got time to just double check everything and make sure the show is going to be, you know, has the best chance of success that it will. But if everything comes at the last minute, that has flow-on effects and all that kind of thing. So we've got the best interest at heart.
And look, it's funny, you know, just a couple of weeks ago, I was doing an event where we made a presentation for the presenters. It was last minute. And so on the day of the show, we were still receiving the final content for it and also getting some changes. And it's a very small thing, but on the night, everything had been done, it had been approved. We did a run through just before doors. It was all good. But it was so funny. I looked up and I'm going, what happened on the third build of that slide? For some reason, it reverted to an old font.
Yeah.
Now, that had all been changed. We'd actually changed it with our clients on screen before, let's say an hour before.
Yeah.
Now, whatever happened, it's no one's fault. But the point was, that's a small thing. Now, that could have been the wrong logo, or it could have been
The wrong figures.
the wrong figures for an AGM, let's say. That suddenly that has huge reverberations if someone's taken a photo of that saying 1.4 bill when it should have been 1.4 mil or whatever.
Yeah.
So these little things, again, we go back to the magic. Things still, that didn't matter. No one was even looking for it. There was no brand issues. There was no style guide.
But it could have been.
But that's a very small thing. And so, again, with time, you can also, I always talk to clients about in a film, they might be filming 1 or 2 minutes a day and look at all the people that are just standing around.
Yeah.
Or when you're talking about a theatre show, and, I don't really come from a theatre background, but I've done lots of stuff in theatres as a performer. And suddenly, on some shows that I've been involved with, we were rehearsing for 4 weeks. The one 90-minute kid show, like it was 4 weeks of rehearsals.
Yeah.
And all the things. And so the more time we all have to be on the same page, the better it is.
Yep.
Or the more time certain people can translate stuff back out, the better it is too.
The flip side to that is when you get a client that, because they're all in, but show's tomorrow morning and they want to keep rehearsing it and rehearsing it and rehearsing it. And it's kind of their Super Bowl. It's just another Tuesday for us. So they want us back. We've got to be back in at 5 a.m. because they're going to be back in at 6, and it's going on and on and on, and they're just faffing about to some point where someone's got to say, well, these boys need to all go and sleep because tomorrow is going to be in jeopardy because they're going to be back here at 5. And it's a tough one to breach because the client can literally have the next 4 days off if they want, but we've just got to go to the next job.
And I started talking about that earlier, Linton, and then I deviated to some other compelling point that will just be the thing will be the most quoted part in this whole podcast. And I can just imagine how many thousands of people will be listening to it per second. I've got that very positive vibe about myself. But 2 things happen there. Everyone now understands that there's a limit from a safety point of view. And
that didn't exist a long time ago.
No. So and you go back to rock and roll, that just didn't exist.
No.
And people just work for days on days. I take it out of the client who's got a huge reputational issue to deliver in front of their superiors or their colleagues the next day.
Yep.
And I think about the classic is the covers band. And so during the afternoon you have a certain time allocated for a sound check.
Yep.
And at different times after 90 minutes, because it was the client's son's band, you had to say, and I've said this to a few bands, I said, just so you know, in future, if you want to do corporate, you're not coming in for a rehearsal.
No, you're not playing every track.
You're coming in for a sound check.
Yeah,
and the sound check is so that we can check the lines, that everyone can hear you. You can make sure you're happy with your levels. And then if there's something special we need to do because we're introducing the CEO or we're doing, that's fair enough. But that's a sound check. And, I think one of those big things with presenters generally, and I see it a lot and everybody, we all do it ourselves, is we put off because not many people like getting up there. And so what happens is we put off making our slides, or we put off making our plans because I don't want to think about being in front of people, and then it's now 2 weeks away and I should have...
Yeah.
And that's... If we could change one thing, because suddenly it's like going... If I'm going into the city, let's say it's Christmas time, don't know why I'm thinking about that, but it's Christmas time and it's 50 minutes away. If I leave 60 minutes, I've got a 10-minute buffer.
Yeah.
I won't be late. So the buffers are really important.
Yeah.
And I know we're sort of carrying around, but so then on the day, that stuff is good. And so, like even having a nice run schedule that is clear and having a rehearsal schedule that is clear, which means that and and as best we can, and we know that often at doors the poor crew are probably still working and they haven't had their proper break. But I do things like I always on a bigger show I say, look, we're doing lunch, no worries, but we're also doing a pre-dinner dinner. So at about 5, if it's a rolling break or at least you can get out there and at least you get a bit more good food into your.
It's amazing what a difference that can make, actually.
Well, like because it's going to be tough, right?
Yeah. You already got a lot going on. There's a bit of pressure and everything. If you're hungry as well, it makes a big difference, and they feel appreciated as well, which is another big part of it.
But going back to the point now, for the second time I've carried over on it, but I do say to clients that these people, especially if you are working in a venue and you're the venue techs in a venue, even though it is the most important for me and for my client, for them it is another day.
Yep.
I also think, to be fair, sometimes those crews do need to pull their socks up.
Totally.
That kind of there's a combination of, if I treat you well, and the way that often I see it, I remember doing a few big shows for a great multinational. They were fantastic. They took great advice, but when I heard about what they were doing for a week of shows, they had one person on the desk, and I said, "Really? That's..." And just on the bigger things that we were doing, I said, we're going to need to have a lighting person on for those days. And so in the end, on some of these days, we had 3 people instead of 1. And that's a little way that if you know your way around, let's call it control, and you know what implications there are on a show.
Yeah.
I mean, I've done shows where, I remember this is a classic just after the Grand Prix came to Melbourne, and we were in the Grand Prix, the sheds above the Grand Prix, and it was the client was really excited, and they'd spent all this money on drape lines. They'd spent all this money on complicated radio mics for 6 or 8 panellists. I was just the MC guy. I arrived, I think I was filling in for someone, and I said, "Oh, where's the crew?" And they said, that was the way we saved the money. This is a true story.
Yeah.
I said, "Oh wow, there's like 6 radio mics and they hadn't been powered up, and so I don't know how to do this properly." In the end, I said, you're going to have to call someone in for this because we are going to be in lots of trouble here. But we've done the budget, but they had the plants and they had the drape lines, the coloured drapes. So it's again the priorities, and often people have spent more money on the table centres than they have on the proper crew. Even though, I mean, it does cost money, and I think we have to have another discussion around the true cost of AV. Frankly, I think it's getting terribly out of hand. That's a whole other story. But yeah, like that's another way of making sure that we are going to be working hard, but there are 3 crew now and not 1.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we have a show caller, or we have a technical director, or we have someone doing the slides from the company, or whatever.
And it's an interesting position from the person actually providing the AV in that situation. At what point you, as someone who's providing that, go, you know what, I'm not comfortable with having 6 mics there and no one to look after it? Because from my point of view, I'd be thinking, that's going to go terribly.
Oh, well, John,
and then everyone's going to say, oh, this mob did the AV and it sounded horrible, and so your reputation's on the line as well. So even if if it means you don't get that gig, it's like, do I want to risk something going wrong like that?
Well, but just the cost and all those things that can go wrong, and that's again where there needs to be clear understanding about why and what. But I also think it's another area where often you kind of need to have a producer, or you need to have someone who's overlooking. Yeah. And yes, the producer's still going to be telling you you've got to spend all this money on AV and oh my God, and they've got a crew. And if I hit that one more time, I'm going to buy all the crew another glass of water. It's
cool. It's on you.
Yeah, it's on me. It's on me, please. But that area of actually just, what were we saying?
What were we saying? We were...
Before I knocked the mic again?
I was having a glass of water. Sorry, I got distracted.
Well, that was the 6 radio mic story at the...
Yes, but it was something about... what was it about? That's a bit embarrassing. It's just a cut and edit.
So control is an interesting place. I mean, for us, it kind of comes home. we don't necessarily, I don't know if we call it a sacred place, but it's certainly a home. It's base, you know.
Yeah, it can feel like that on the big shows.
Yeah.
You kind of, you're going to be there for the next few days. You want to set up your own little hub.
Yeah. So we kind of all take our own ways of setting it up, and everyone's got their own thing. And the strange thing is, and often you can have a client who's with you, and you can form a little community, a little village, and it'd be great. You can also have a client that's not always happy with you and having to sit there for the next 2 days in a kind of weird, awkward silence. That's always a weird one, where they've they're forced to go mingle. That's always strange.
But it's kind of that idea of training, and Doug Tremlett was an amazing executive producer, creative, and he always used to talk about how you need to train your client.
Yeah.
And it's more about letting clients understand why. It's like all of us. We see a home making the block, and we see what it's like to make. And we say we can do that.
Yes. Yeah.
And suddenly going, after 10 hours, you haven't got one cork right, and you're just in a screaming heap, and you're aching.
Yeah.
And there has to be again this collaboration. And I think the trouble is in this event space that lots of people get involved and don't really understand what AV is about.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or controls about. I mean, I've had very senior event people say, "Oh, thank goodness you're here because the AV stuff just."
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, but you're responsible for 400, 500, $1 million, $2 million gigs with destinational events and stuff, and you still don't know about AV.
Yeah.
Like it's like going.
Well, that's
a really important point.
And that's actually where you're at. You're going to explain the role of the producer, and it's like that intermediate between the events and the AV people, someone that understands and can bring it all together.
Yeah, and it's like that old gag about Kennard's had that great campaign about Mr. Whatever. Hey mate, can I borrow your wheelbarrow? And you say no, but I can rent it to you. And the old gag about saying, well, I don't want to buy it. I just want to rent it.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, but the trouble is, who else is going to get it for you? I remember doing this hilarious gig at a trade show. I think it was in Sydney, and the client couldn't believe the amount of money they had to pay for. They would have been LCD screens, maybe, or even just plasmas, probably plasmas.
Yeah.
So the guy went and bought plasmas with stands, and he'd hired and bought them. And then, of course, he had to have them
test and tag,
and he was really furious, and so then he still had to hire in the other televisions. He then went back and sold the televisions back. But because to be fair to him, he could buy cheap tellies for 3 days cheaper than he was going to hire them.
Yeah.
But the point was, it didn't work out for him because he hadn't planned it properly, and he didn't realise the implications.
And then where are you going to power it from? Where are you going to feed the content from?
That's right.
Are you going to be able to make it loop the way you want to? It's all these things that it happens in a lot of industries, like video production as well. As technology gets a bit more accessible, and like now it's like everyone's got a camera. Like, oh, you're just going to come with a camera. My cousin's got a camera. Why does it cost so much? And it's like there's all this experience that comes along with it as well that sometimes and what you're paying for.
And that's why that idea of the the building thing, because everyone can go to Bunnings and do a bit of stuff, and that's why the builders carry on, or the tradies can go, oh gee, they don't know, and I'm always fixing up problems. So I'm not saying it's only because of the event or the conference or the communication industry that we work in, but the reality is so many people go in there not really understanding all those bits and how many people are involved to make it happen, and why the control is very important, and you don't realise what's happening. You don't even realise what some of those people
are
doing.
It's a bit of a mystery.
It's a mystery, and you go up a step into the world of telly. I remember sort of hanging around television in the maybe in the late 90s was my I spent a lot of time around Channel 9 and stuff, and you go up to control there, and you go, you reckon you've got control, and you're going, each person had a job, and you'd watch that person, you'd watch the director's assistant, they had a job, the supers, everything was just, but it was all there. And the other thing I think people don't realise a lot is how much time and risk is involved in just building this thing every time.
Yeah.
Now, it's the same,
Yeah.
but we didn't, we forgot that lead or that bit or something went wrong.
And that goes back to what we were saying with the planning and when we can get things in place beforehand and be prepared when we walk in, is that it is a live event. Things are going to potentially go wrong or curveballs are going to come. If we've planned all of that stuff before, when that hits us, we're going to be able to deal with it. We're going to have time, we're going to have the people there. But if we haven't figured any of that out and we're figuring out everything on the day and a curveball comes, that's when things can fall apart, I guess.
Well, even the way that, on big jobs, I remember years ago, and this is Pete Dyer, who's a great technical director. We're doing a job in Sydney, and he said, well, here's a schematic. I'm going, oh, really? But that was a really important... He said, I always do schematics because I now know. And then he shows that to the production house who's doing the technicals, and he's saying that's what I want. There's no mystery now. No, I'm saying that's where I want the cables. That's where that's how it's going.
Yeah.
That's what I want. And you see that a lot too, even between TDs and in-house people arguing about the size of a screen, and the TD who I trust is saying, no, I need it like this. And the person's going, no, that's how it's going to be fine. And the TD's saying, no, I need it like this. We do need to tweak it because I've got content that's going to work in a certain way. So it's a funny.
And the crew appreciate that as well. Like if you've got a crew together and you can actually say, well, look, here's a schematic. This is how I want it set up. They don't like, oh, cool, I get that. I can just get on with my job. I'm not trying to ask a million questions while they're also talking to the rigger and try to get the TD's attention and all this kind of stuff. I can just get on with my job.
Totally. If you give people a choice, they'll do it their own way if you don't give them any guidance. I mean, to say, here's some bricks, here's some timber, go build me a house. And if it turns out like I'm mock Georgian and someone was expecting an Art Deco, it's like it's a totally different house.
There's a whole new concept. I want my control surround in not mock Georgian, in Georgian.
That's right.
You've set a new standard.
I said Edwardian. But
I do not want that terrible black drape on some people still have these hilarious microphone stands, the drape hole. You've seen that thing? That's hilarious. Yeah, no, that's how we do it here.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
So there's two like this in the middle with a bit of gaff tape here, and that's part of it. And then of course you've got that person.
We've always done it.
That's how we're going to do it again.
Yeah.
So look, the world we are in awe, and we all need to learn more, and we all need to give more time, and we often don't have that time.
Yeah.
And I think it could probably go both ways as well. Like the audiovisual team needs to know the kind of pressures that the event organiser's under, and I know working in a venue, you're working with hospitality a lot, and you kind of get to know what their challenges are during a setup, so you can think ahead and think, well, I know they're going to have to get these chairs in, but I'm going to have to get up there on a lifter. Let me have a conversation with the guy, and we can work out ahead of time before we start yelling at each other because we're both under pressure. How can we organise ourselves so that we both get our jobs done? And you can only, get to that point when you realise where other people are coming from and all that kind of thing, rather than just worrying about what your job is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And look, that's at the moment I've got this other. I'm probably going to write another little post around. I actually think one of the other things too that really hit me recently in a big 5-star is how accessible all the AV crew are, and on the day the client is paying top dollar for 5-6 AV people who are there all day. However, you can't find a venue person for days.
No. Yeah.
And so at different times, again, I've seen the AV team become the whipping boys or girls by the client, and then also by the venue when it wasn't anything to do with them.
Yeah.
But they actually now, and I think this is another really big positive point, and it's kind of an extra responsibility that I'm sure the AV people on site don't want to know about, but I think it's a huge opportunity because, in the old days in big venues, they had, and they were always house men, they weren't house women. Yes. And so they had people who would go and get things.
Yes.
And now you've got your venue manager, who often is a diminutive woman, who has to go off and get a giant piece of stage.
Yeah.
And you wonder where they've gone because for 40 minutes they're trying to push this bit of heavy metal back out, which technically they should never be pushing by themselves.
Yeah.
And so that whole thing around the responsibility of AV inside venues is probably even more important now. So the wonder's gone out from behind the control
Yeah.
into another area,
Yeah.
which kind of I think is an opportunity in some ways, as long as the venues, which of course never do, because they treat any supplier very lowly.
Yeah.
And that also needs to change. And
Yeah.
I'm going to be following that with one or two general managers in the next few weeks. So that's true.
So what's your best or fondest memory of a control position, an ops desk? Like what's the good and bad? What's the worst and what's the best thing that's ever happened?
Well, but I think when you ask that question, Linton, I'm thinking way back to about 1998, I reckon.
Yeah.
And I'm doing, 1994. And it's the first time I can say I legitimately was doing a roadshow for a client. And it was for Australia Post. And it was for an organisation called AmCham. And back then, top companies would spend a fortune on their own people performing in front of an audience to go on to be the national AmCham champion, let's call it.
Okay.
And so somehow I was involved with Australia Post. Rob Woodhouse, the great Olympic swimmer and extraordinarily successful businessman, sports business entrepreneur, was one of those people. Anyway, so I remember having to negotiate with it because I get a call from Australia Post going, look at this rider, because we had 5 people and we had all these tech specs.
Yep.
And they had microphones. And they're going, what do you mean they're $295 a piece, right? So I ring up Shane, who was the in-house manager at Grand, and I'm a novice because I'm a guy who'd be doing magic shows and hosting festivals where I didn't know about AV because I just rock up and I just grab a mic and was it on a lead or was it radio? It didn't matter. I didn't mind. But in this case, my client's going, we've got to spend $1,000 on this stuff. And I had this really long chat with Shane around costs. I reckon that was my biggest insight into what was behind it. Because he actually took the time to explain why there was cost involved. That was a very small thing. And they were very good. And we did rehearsals. And
They were pretty I used to operate AmChams at the Hyatt Kingsgate in Sydney.
Right.
It's a Sydney venue that did them. And they were pretty... We did a quick rehearsal, but they were a lunchtime show.
Yeah, and you get in early and slam through. But I think that was a really strong insight into actually. And then on the day, Shane was, what's Shane's second name?
Somerville.
Yeah, Shane Somerville. Lovely Shane. Hello, Shane. If you're watching, I know you will be. On the day, they actually were very good. And I think they were probably troubleshooting, going, well, we don't want any trouble.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, that was a regular. I used to do it every month, sort of thing. So, and then there was a final.
Yeah. But the point was, suddenly it was that, oh wow, look, there are, and again, being around theatre, I did understand all that, but it was in a theatre, it was just there.
Yeah.
And so anyway, the point was I reckon that was a really strong learning about, and then knowing that everywhere we went, we had to have those elements on the way. And but we did rehearsals off site and we did all this stuff, and it was fantastic. I'm still very proud of the little kind of 3-minute sketch we did. But the point is, I reckon that was a really good learning for me. No, we didn't win, but we were very good. But because the main reason was, if you want to go there, was that a couple of the other companies, and I can't remember who they were, they employed professional actors.
Oh, really?
Oh, wow.
They weren't people in the firm, and so again, all these people from Australia Post, they were legitimate middle to senior management.
Yeah,
people.
that's what you had to be.
In the spirit of it.
In the spirit, and I can tell you, there's a few famous faces in one of these groups, and
Right.
Go on.
anyway, that's another thing. But that's a really, I think that's a really important thing, and I think as you go along, you realise how you need to depend on. Again, it goes back to another thing for me is what the AV company says they can do. Often, I don't think they really can do without an intermediary, a producer, a creative person to kind of interlock between what the client wants, because you don't have time for that. You don't have time unless you're going to pay for that. So again, I think it's more about understanding the power of having people who come with you. So, and the client's always asking questions around, well, surely we can get it cheaper than that. And often in-house it might be a bit cheaper, but you lose the ability for the in-house company. They know where the things are. They know where the door can be opened. They know where the smoke alarm. They know all these things. And so I also see this horrible thing where people go, oh, we're not going to use you in-house because we're going to bring in stuff. And you're going, so you've actually made the client pay for all that out and all that in and all that out again.
Yeah, it's like a balance. It's like
You have to,
It's the people you know, but also there's all that side of it as well.
But special.
What are you getting out of it?
The more you're there, the longer you're there, maybe the more you build up. But I think the big thing is you value those people. And that's why you make sure they get lunch and they get dinner breaks and sometimes the dinner break just doesn't happen separately. It does happen in your lap. It does happen in between mains.
Yeah, we've all eaten that.
But if the intention's there, that's
But on a good show, and time. I think that's a hard thing. The time for everybody, that's a challenge. The time.
Well, when meals been served, we generally don't have time to eat.
No.
Because there's something going on.
Yeah.
And then by the time we can eat, like the band's playing or something, and it's cold but that's just...
But other things, along the way, again, it's understanding how that whole process works. Because, again, if you are the client and you go, oh, my God, this AV is costing me $35,000, that's a lot of money. That's half my EA salary for the year, all in one night. But then if you say, I am going to add more people in. I'm going to actually, maybe for the band set, I'm going to bring in another lighting and sound person, or I'm going to bring monitors in at 5 who haven't been there since 8 in the morning. So there's some other people. So then the responsibility goes away from we're going to work hard up until the CEO's finished or the awards are done or whatever that time is. And then things like that as well happen. I think you've got to be really, and that's about understanding, I suppose, people management in some ways, and knowing, again, as you say, they're there every day. They're in this space every day. Can you make their life better? And I, that sounds like a flippant thing to say, but it's really important. How can you... And I know, is it a bag of lollies or is it a bag of Snickers? I always make sure I bring a few Snickers and Mars bars.
Well, it kind of goes back to what you were saying before about just understanding that, yes, it's important that we rehearse and it's important we get things right, but also we need to think it is 10 o'clock at night, they're going to have to be back at 6. What's better, the more rehearsal or techs that have slept and they're ready to do a good job in the morning? So it's like, it's always a balancing act.
And it's often because one guy just wants to keep going. And he's just not.
And so what we often do in a conference environment, if there's trust with the AV company and understanding, and often we now say, look, this is what might happen. We say, crew, you go at 6.
We're going to keep going.
Leave the mic on.
But we've got the mics. My TD knows what's happening. He might be getting paid a bit more than you are a day. We are here for these clients. We will be here. And sometimes I've been there till midnight because someone's so worried or so concerned. But then the crew come back and they're not beholden to that whole thing. So that's what we do. And we go, okay, where can we cut loose? Get out of there. But, for all of us, but we're only there for 3 days or 4 days. And that's our responsibility. Our client is paying us to make sure it happens. And I reckon that's the other thing too, that probably, again, on the other side, often sometimes, the crew who are just there may not actually understand that part of it. Maybe that's that lovely idea of job sharing around so that actually they can say, wow, so that person or those two people, they're going, oh my goodness, the setup was late. Wow, how are we going to get we've got lots of things to get through before 6 o'clock or before 7 o'clock, before doors. You're still doing your job, but these people... But that's, again, why the executive producers on a television show get paid the money they do.
That's right.
That's the job. So no one's complaining, but I think, again, that understanding around, boy, they are really taking on lots of bits outside of... In fact, more and more, I think another really big secret is actually you don't tell the crew anything unless they need to know it, really, because it doesn't change.
No.
But you can say sometimes, just so you know, the person about to walk in is going to be a handful. Just so you know.
Good heads up.
Whatever they say, there's going to be one voice. It's going to be my voice. We'll make that happen. But again, over time, that doesn't happen.
No.
It's very rare because those people, either you've taught those people or they're not on site or the client who wants to save money and have their people involved It just doesn't work. Unless you say, well, are they able to be here from 8 in the morning?
Yeah.
Right through. Well, I thought we might get them in at 4. We're rehearsing from 8.
Yeah.
So those sorts of things too, again, that whole, well, I do a bit of audio, so I thought I might be able to offer, he's going to come in and help you do the audio. No, he's not going to help you do the audio.
No, exactly. Yeah.
It doesn't happen in a surgery.
No.
Yeah, I got a mate. He's got a few tools.
Got a really fine drill here.
Yeah.
Can't be that hard.
No, you do. I mean, there's scale and sizes of jobs, but I mean, the client the client's going to help you pack it down, and they're just never around.
Okay.
Well, that's right.
They're off. They're gone.
Well, the classic ones is like, we don't need to hire any laptops. We'll bring our laptops in, and it's just like, okay, it's locked down from IT, and it's also got like 40,000, things that boot up when you log into it, and goes to sleep after 2 minutes.
Exactly.
But that's good. Yeah, save some money on that.
Yeah.
But save them.
Don't worry, I bought one anyway, but I'm going to use mine for free.
Yeah, because I don't want the headache.
Yeah, well, that's on our jobs, but it's funny. Even some of the crew, I'm doing a speaking job in another city at the moment, and they queried that our TD is going to bring about 7 laptops. And they said, why? I'm going, because we've just told you we've got Vision fold back. We're running backups.
Yeah,
we've got
now,
Vision. We're running. We said what it was, and so that's the alarm bell, right? So we now know that person won't be on the job because they were just the salesperson. But that's a concern because they weren't going, oh, we understand why. They were querying why someone with 30 years' experience is spec'd a certain way. Now that was a weird.
Yeah.
Well, okay, here we go.
Yeah.
So let's just be careful about that. So those sorts of things are, you need to. It's what it is.
And we could talk for days.
Yeah, let's do it.
And I think we should.
But is there a dinner break?
There's a phone call break.
There's a phone call. Well, I think that's a sign from God. I think we need to pause this one.
Yes.
I think we come back. We do some more. We keep going. But for now, I think let's close off today.
Yeah, well, this is a great discussion.
Yeah.
Like, it's just amazing where...
Where do we go?
Well, we got a lot to unpick, as they say. So let's wrap up for today. Thank you, Andrew, for coming in.
Thanks, John. Fantastic.
This has been another awesome episode of Gafferpedia. And we will keep going, and we will see you again. And I guess goodbye for just now, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time.
See you next time.
See ya.
Hooray.
Bye.
Bye.
Gafferpedia is brought to you by TechBox, Hippo Event Technology, AV Hire, and Cardigan Creative. Catch you on the next episode.